Welcome to State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. The State of Wellbeing is a holistic well-being podcast with the goal of supporting the campus community as we strive to be a growing, high-performing, and healthy university.
Welcome back to another episode of the State of Wellbeing podcast. My name is Kevin Sackrader. I am the Executive Director for the Center for Professional Enrichment and Teaching Excellence here at South Dakota State, and I am also a member of the SDSU Wellbeing team. We are excited to have join us today for our State of Wellbeing podcast, members of the Jack's Cupboard student team, as we focus on the work of Jack's Cupboard here at SDSU. And so joining us are co-vice presidents, Olivia Hussman and Cassandra Pappas. How are you two doing today?
Doing good.
We're doing really well. Thanks for having us, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm excited to have this conversation. Jack's Cupboard is something that I've been involved in, at least assisting with some food drives for about 5 or 6 years now. And it's something I think means a lot to the SDSU community. And so I think it's important for us to have this conversation. And so I mentioned I've been helping with some food drives for about 5 or 6 years, but I think before we get too far into our conversation, I just want to give you all the opportunity to tell us maybe who you are. We know you're members of the SDSU Jack's Cupboard student team, but like, what's your major? Where do you come to us from? That sort of information. And then let's just jump in and get a little history on Jack's Cupboard, what it is, how it began. Kind of start there. And so maybe Olivia, why don't you get us started?
Yeah, awesome. So my name is Olivia Hussman. I hail from Mitchell, South Dakota. I'm a senior nutrition and dietetics major with an emphasis on sustainable food systems. And I've been involved with Jack's Cupboard since I was a freshman. I discovered it through my honors orientation course. We had to do research on a campus resource, and I started volunteering there, and then just kind of snowballed from there. We started the student team in 2023, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit more, but then I'll let Cassandra introduce herself.
Yeah, for sure. So my name is Cassandra Pappas. I am also a senior. I come from Groton, South Dakota, which is a small town by Aberdeen. I'm majoring in political science with minors in philosophy and legal studies and a certificate in government and lobbying advocacy.
You got a lot going on.
I got a lot.
So tell me, before we get into Jack's Cupboard, Olivia kind of alluded to this, but Cassandra, what is the Jack's Cupboard student team?
Yeah, for sure. So we started this in 2023, and we kind of just did it as a reason to make sure that the cupboard is always going to stay afloat, and back in, I think, 2022, there was kind of a little shift in leadership, and that posed to be a problem. There was no one actually, being responsible for, making sure there was, grocery orders done and stuff like that. So the idea behind the student team was that there was always going to be, students looking out for the other students, and it's also a great just way to get involved on campus, too.
Well, it's awesome. It sounds like there's a lot of opportunities for the Jack student team to impact the students at SDSU. And I think it's important maybe to back up a little bit. And I kind of made an assumption and skipped a step here. But what exactly is Jack's Cupboard? Olivia, maybe you want to take that one.
Yeah. So Jack's Cupboard was started in 2018, an interdepartmental effort to come together to really provide students with a resource that might be facing food insecurity on campus. So we're located on the southwest side of Ben Rifle Hall. And in that space, like Cassandra mentioned, we have individuals that are in charge of facility management and sustainability and nutrition. So we're really just filling the cupboard full of food, and individuals are able to come in, students, I should say, of SDSU are able to come in and utilize that resource on Tuesdays and Wednesdays this year.
Well, and we mentioned food drives. I mentioned that I've been a part of a Pack the Pantry drive that we host with faculty and staff each fall. But where does Jack's Cupboard get the food and the products that the clients of Jack's Cupboard can come in and utilize?
Yeah, so through some really actually exciting partnerships that have happened in the last 2 years, we're now sponsored by Feeding South Dakota. So we get pallets from them every other Thursday. And then we also have a new partnership with Quick Star. So we get goods from their bakeries as well as pre-made sandwiches and other snacks. So that's a pretty new development. And then like you said, we are really kind of furnished by both campus and community food drives that are also now now kind of organized by individuals on the student team. And then also we do rely primarily on a fund that we use to go to and pick up like Walmart orders as well.
Sure. Supplement the donations,
exactly.
Right? Yeah. So, Cassandra, why don't you tell us a little bit about how does Jack's Cupboard work to connect with students and get the message out there that of the impact that it could have?
Yeah, for sure. So our biggest thing that we do right now is we always tell people to like follow our social media, specifically our Instagram. We always post updates over there about like, whether our hours have changed, if we have like new products or stuff like that. So definitely go check that out. Besides that, we also post a lot of posters around campus. So you've probably seen 1 or 5. They're pretty much in every academic building. And that's really what we try to do. Besides that, we also have some of our student board team who are like volunteering in Jack's Cupboard, and every once in a while, like, having those like personal conversations about like, this is what we do, behind the scenes. I feel like that's how we got a lot of our, current student board members.
So how big is the board? I guess that's a interesting question. You mentioned that. Now I'm curious.
I think right now we're at 12 to 13.
Oh, wow. Okay.
There's a few different positions that have co, just kind of like we are co's. So just to help alleviate some of the work.
Right. I'm sure there's a lot of work. I'm just curious, as a board member, how many hours do you typically put in supporting Jack's Cupboard every week?
It definitely depends upon the position. I think we can both agree there. There are some positions like facility management that I mentioned that's probably there for, at least 4 hours a week, I would say, because they're responsible for making all of the pickups from Walmart and like unloading the pallets. Other positions like president and co-vice president, which Cassandra and I are, I think are more almost administrative tasks, if you'd say that. So like working on the teams folder, kind of keeping everyone organized and really starting the initiatives that I guess are kind of fueled by the individuals that are in roles, not necessarily below us, but with us, collaborating with us. So yeah, I would say an average of like 4 hours a week, but it's all very rewarding, as you can.
Well, I can tell you're both very passionate about the work. I know we have a few other questions I want to just talk to you about, but we're kind of talking about the logistics of it. And so I'm curious, if I'm a student who is interested in reaching out and utilizing the services of Jack's Cupboard, what does that look like? Like, how do I reach out? And then can I use Jack's Cupboard once a week, once a month? What does that look like as well?
Perfect. Yeah. So we are open, as Olivia mentioned, Tuesdays and Wednesdays from 3 to 6 p.m. So definitely come in anytime during that. It's kind of like a shopping system. So like you go around and you shop, you get your food, and then you tap your ID, and we have a few questions that we have to ask, and then you on your merry way. Sure. But if those hours don't work for you for whatever reason, you can definitely email us at the SD State email, and we will set up a time that we were able to come and help to make sure you're able to use our services. We do try to emphasize to use us once a week. Okay. However, we also understand that circumstances happen. Sure. So if you have to be there more than once, that's okay. We just really want to make sure that we have enough food for everyone that we're trying to serve. That's our biggest thing.
Sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about the students that you do have the privilege of serving here at SDSU. And I'm as part of the well-being team, we really do focus on the mental, emotional, and physical well-being of our students, and ways that various offices or groups can do support that. And at the core of that, oftentimes, are frustrations that students might face as members of the SDSU or Brookings community. And I'm just curious if you've had the opportunity to identify, and maybe within the mission of Jack's Cupboard, this happens, but identify what some of those frustration points that our students might face are, and how does Jack's Cupboard work to address those frustrations that students might encounter as they navigate the day-to-day of being an SDSU student?
Yeah, so I think as one can imagine, probably the biggest, I guess, social issue that we're kind of focusing on is alleviating food insecurity or mitigating it. And it's been well established that individuals facing food insecurity. I mean, we've all been there, maybe not knowing like where our next meal is going to come from, which is like the very broad definition of food insecurity, has detrimental impacts on mental, as well as like social health as well, because food is a very social event, and eating and dining is a very social event. And anxiety and depression can also come along when an individual might not be able to access those social events. And then I think the physical health that we aim to alleviate is also fairly obvious. Everyone needs to eat.
Right. Well, my perception, and please tell me if I'm wrong, but my perception would be if you are concerned about food insecurity and where that next meal might come from, it's really hard to be a good student and be successful in your studies. It's hard to be a successful, really thriving member of a community if that's the case. And I'm just curious if I'm on the right track there, and if that's part of what your board maybe talks about as far as looking to provide additional support and services to students.
Yeah, for sure. You know, like you said, if you're hungry or if you're food insecure, you're not going to be a good student. You know, we also try to make sure we provide some of those different products that like help bring yourself like pride. So like deodorant, you know, you're not going to want to go to class if you don't have the right products, and you're going to, you know, not feel comfortable. So we definitely try to make sure like, you know, all that stuff is in there, and like also just providing other resources. You know, there's only we only have so much scope that we can, you know, cover through the SDSU students. So like just providing other different places they can go to is definitely one of our big things that we've been really trying to strive for this semester.
So when you mention providing, I guess resources or supports or other places that they could go to, maybe connecting them to other places, what are some of those places that you're connecting with? And one of the questions I have on my mind is related to like clothing, like in the winter and that sort of stuff. If there's resources that you help connect them to related to that, or what are the other resources that might be out there?
Yeah. So clothing wise, it's actually interesting because some individuals like from the campus community and just other students will bring like hats and gloves and their old coats, and even some book bags too as well. Not exactly related to winter wear, but still things like that to the cupboard. So we are able to give those away, which is a really awesome thing and a really cool feeling.
But I will emphasize, as you say that, it's probably not the primary focus. And so it's not as if there's a closet of those things waiting.
We would love for that to happen. We just don't have the space.
But yeah, other resources I would probably say are like the Brookings Salvation Army, I think would be a really good place. And then we have posters directing individuals to other like hunger focused resources in the community, which is Brookings is an amazing community for I guess community involvement and community support. So like
feeding Brookings.
Exactly. As you can imagine. Yep. And the Brookings Food Pantry as well is probably the only other one that I could add. Unless Cassandra, you have anything else?
I think those are the main ones. There's definitely other resources if you have like kids. You know, we see a large like population of graduate students, which often means you have families. So there's different like the backpack program like provides food to kids, and like they put food in their backpack on Fridays and they get to go home with it for the weekend to make sure they're fed, which is a really cool program. I always also like to just reference Brookings Area United Way. They're kind of like a hub of resources. So if you ever need anything, you definitely stop in their office and they help direct you to like all these little hidden gems and Brookings is like what I like to say.
There are a lot of really cool opportunities in Brookings to help just support the different various needs that individuals in the community might have. So how would you encourage the SDSU community to engage and support the work of Jack's Cupboard? Yeah,
so I think we can both touch on that one pretty well. But when it comes to students, I think we will both definitely say to promote the student team. So we have a really great executive board coming in for the 2025-2026 year, but really starting to strengthen our like general member population is really important. So we can continue to promote ourselves through like general meetings, and just strengthening our volunteer base through continued involvement in Jack's Cupboard as well. Because it's really cool to volunteer like a couple hours a week. Like that's amazing, and we so appreciate that. But taking it one step further and also joining our club is an amazing way to keep involved. And then I'll let Cassandra touch on maybe staff and faculty if she has anything.
So like staff and faculty specifically, we love just having knowledge about Jack's Cupboard being spread, you know, if in your office or like your department, anywhere, just having like a poster up or just like knowing the general knowledge, like when we're open, I think is very impactful. So just in case, you know, you have those one-on-one conversations with students and you realize that this is maybe a resource they need, you know. Same kind of goes for community members too. We're trying to branch out. So just general knowledge, I think, is probably the most important thing right now.
You know, and so part of my job here at SDSU is to do a lot of professional development with faculty and to really focus on teaching and learning and helping our faculty enhance teaching and learning throughout their courses. And as you were saying that, Cassandra, one of the things that jumped out in my mind, because we spent a lot of time talking about syllabus development, is how easy and cool it would be to just have a piece at the bottom of your syllabus that just says, hey, FYI, there's this campus resource out there if you need it, and just share that to your students. And so if we have faculty and staff listening, I think that could be a really easy add to a syllabus.
Sure.
So the other thing I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about is as it relates to, I suppose, the community supporting Jack's Cupboard is kind of we talked about donations and donation of items and food drives and that sort of stuff. And I think the concept of that is pretty self-explanatory. But what I'm curious about is if there are some specific products or needs that Jack's Cupboard really emphasizes with those doing different drives, or if I'm a faculty, staff member, or a student listening to this and I want to contribute to Jack's Cupboard, what are some things that I should be thinking about as far as making a donation, and what kind of products do you really wish you had more of?
Yeah, for sure. So we definitely say if there's something that you're not going to use, give it to us. Anything that's shelf stable, obviously, we take. We go through a lot of things like, you know, like pasta. We go through snacks like crazy. So that's your, like, you know, your granola bars, fruit snacks, anything like that. We find that students, you know, like items that they can just like whip out during class and like quickly eat. Sure. So anything like that, you know, canned fruit, baking items are also really popular.
I was going to ask about baking items. Sure.
You know, you wouldn't think of it like, you know, having a nice box of brownies to cook at 2 a.m. with your friends. You know, that's definitely a memory that we want people to be able to make. So yeah, definitely basically donate anything that you think you have. We can even take some expired foods. If we don't use it, then we will give it to different resources that can. Sure. And then we do try to have focus drives every once in a while. We think it's kind of fun. We do Hobos Fighting Hunger is our biggest student donation stuff. So we ask for donations from like different student like organizations, and we have like kind of like different themed boxes that they can do. So
I love that. So Olivia, we're getting near the end of our time, but I wanted to give each of you, but we'll start over here with you, a chance to talk about events that might be coming up that you wanted to emphasize and make sure that the SDSU community is aware of as they look to support or utilize Jack's Cupboard. And so I'm just going to throw the ball to you and say events coming up, important drives, those sort of things. Tell us about them.
Yeah, thanks for giving me the opportunity to kind of plug this. So come move out week for the residence halls. We have a Cram the Cupboard. It's kind of a play on the Pack the Pantry that you have started. So the Cram the Cupboard is more of a residence hall food drive focus. So as a past CA, you see a lot of food being thrown away when individuals are moving out of the residence halls and they don't want to have to carry another box of their extra cereal and crackers and tuna that they never got around to eating in their dorms. So we just encourage those students to instead direct that food into a box in each of the residence halls. So that'll be out. I think that's the first week of May now is move out for 2025.
And that's coming quicker than we realize, right? We're already in February.
Yes, but yeah, so Cram the Cupboard is probably the one that you'll see posters for the most, and definitely get that out to all the students. Yeah.
So, Cassandra, I think you had one or two items you just wanted to make sure you shared with the group as well.
Yeah, Yeah, for sure. So we are trying, kind of like Olivia was saying, we're trying to gain more general student interests. And so for that, we recommend everyone to not only follow us on social media, but follow us on Jack's Club Hub. We would love to eventually start holding events and stuff like that. So we will send notifications through that platform. So definitely go give us a follow on there.
All right. So as we wrap up, the last item I wanted to give you each a chance, or give you a chance as members of the Jack's Cupboard student team to share with us, is just one last opportunity to kind of say, this is how you get in contact with us. This is how you can reach out to either the student team or come directly to Jack's Cupboard, and just give you tell us the where, the how do we get in contact with Jack's Cupboard, and how do we utilize Jack's Cupboard if that's a need?
So I think the easiest way to get in contact with every single member of our student team essentially is that SD State email that Cassandra mentioned earlier. So that's sdsU.jackscupboard@sdstate.edu. And you can find all of that information, like our Jack's Club Hub link as well, on the Jack's Cupboard SD State website. So all you have to do is Google Jack's Cupboard SD State, and that should be the first thing that comes.
And that's a perfect way for us to kind of wrap up our conversation. So Olivia, Cassandra, I want to thank you both for being here today, being a part of this conversation. I want to thank you for the really impactful work that you do as members of the Jack's Cupboard student team as well. I also want to thank all of you who are joining us once again for another episode of the State of Wellbeing podcast. It really was a pleasure to get to join you all today and have this conversation with Cassandra and Olivia as we talked about the impact that Jack's Cupboard has here at South Dakota State University. And so thank you once again for joining us and enjoying another episode of the State of Wellbeing podcast.
Thank you for listening to this episode of State of Wellbeing, a podcast from South Dakota State University. This podcast is brought to you by the Mental Wellbeing Team and SD State Health.